Since
Yeah.
then, you did Dark Knight 3, which is
Guys, we're live.
sorry.
Are we?
We
You
are.
gotta
We are
put
in
up
fact
your
live.
openings.
Oh, I know. I didn't do that because we're so late getting started.
Great.
So everybody knows arguing is a better opening anyway. Like yell at each other. People will find it enticing.
Let everybody know what's going on backstage. You guys think we're all pals, that we hang out, that we argue over who for coffee? No.
Well, I mean, we invited you to the con, but you didn't show up. So
Yes, I know. It's true. It's true. Well,
You
it was
started
like
the show and you didn't even have your camera active.
I didn't realize I didn't think about that. My camera was off. Yeah, I had that's true. I'm the
Hello,
worst
everybody.
I'm the worst host ever. What it was, I'll say about the show. We're in the backstage in the green room before the show. We were talking about Heroes Con, Cartoonicus, Twitless, Matt Krotz, a bunch of other folks were there doing the con thing, selling the books, and Twitless has talked about coming on to talk about the experience at some point. Who knows when that might happen? I can't gaze into the future, but Matt Krotz put up a post this weekend on the Twitter, guilting people for not showing up at the show where all the cool kids were going. And I posted up a Google map of the road from my house to the or my town to their town, and it's 2,300 miles.
See, you should have done something better, and you should have overlaid a Where's Waldo onto the picture and be like, "Can you spot the cool kids?"
He did use those words though, so I wouldn't have thought about that. But that would have been really funny. Anyway, it looked like it was a lot of fun for those people that went and were able to, and all those lucky Eastern Seaboarders. Me,
We'll ask one. Cartoonicus, was it a lot of fun?
That's true.
it was. This was the first time I had really been to a con for the purpose of networking with people. So it was a very unique experience. We shared two giant tables between 9 people. There was hardly any space for anybody to do anything. But Twitless had my back, and so I was able to at least get my foot in the door in a little bit with many of these people. And then, of course, the drama went down, and you got to see things from a very a unique perspective as a previous outsider, right? And so
do you desperately long to have your outsider status returned to you?
no, because so much of the details helped me figure out who all these people are and understand who I was dealing with, and yeah.
Well, as you lousy kids mentions in the comments, this is not the topic of tonight's show.
Yes.
So we need to find other things to discuss. We actually have a whole mess of stuff that we read. Well, most of us read some. Some of us read all of Frank Miller's All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder, which I want to say is, and I'm a fan of awkward titles for things, right? Like the Strange Tale of the Strange Tale of Agorn and Pym of Nantucket is an amazing title, right?
Oh, I got you all beat, by the way. The English. Let me just. The Englishman who went up a hill but came down a mountain.
Classic movie. Great movie. Love the title. And especially if you appreciate anything about turn of the century Welsh culture, the title speaks to the moment. Really love it. But especially
I've read plenty of Japanese light novels and manga that have way more confusing titles.
Yeah.
Oh boy, are you right?
I died and woke up again as a vampire dragon from space or whatever.
And it doesn't stop when you get over to Tapas and Webtoon, by the way.
No. Just how it goes. No, admittedly, most of those titles sound better in their native language and slightly less like a sentence. But when you translate it, they are just like a legit straight sentence.
Yeah.
That
But
being
the
said,
point of why he said it.
that being said,
Yeah.
All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder is a horrible title.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we were to if it were to be, this is actually All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder in another world. Somehow that seems like it would be better.
It sounds like it would be a more fun story, honestly. But
yeah. Oh yeah. So this is the what the series is, and I did not finish it. I remember at the end of last week's show, I was joking about making it the competition to see who could make it to the end, or as far as you could. I did. I made it to issue 4. Some of that was time. I didn't start until last night. I had other things I wanted to do with my time, and just I was started working on it, and then I'm working on comics, guys. Yeah. So I didn't get as far as done as much as I wanted to. But I only made it 4 issues in, and you guys, how did you do, Mike? I'll just ask the question.
I got 10 issues in, and that is the full extent of the run because even Frank Miller did not finish it.
Yes.
So you didn't finish it. He didn't finish it. If you do get involved and invested in this, it would be purposeless because it goes nowhere.
Yep.
That's amazing.
But see, it's going nowhere long before it stops.
It's going everywhere. It spends an issue bringing in the Black Canary for no reason.
Right. All these characters getting character introductions, and then you're never going to see them again.
Yeah. So
you could argue it's going nowhere fast.
Yes.
Yeah. And so Cartoonicus, how far did you get?
I got all the way for the second time. I had already been through all of this years ago. I brought up the idea of doing it in a stream because it's like, oh, we got to talk about how bad this thing is again. So then I had to read up on it again. And about 3 issues in, I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Was this a bad idea? And as a result, for anybody who did finish the thing, I think you deserve a little bit of an award. So,
unfortunately, our channel is operating on poverty rules, and so we have nothing to give you.
No, I made up.
You're offering something.
Yeah, go ahead. There we go.
I survived All-Star Batman and Robin, and all I got was this lousy shirt.
Congratulations, you're a trooper.
And it's not even a shirt; it's just a photo of a shirt. It's the perfect gift.
Well, I'd have it shipped to you if DC wouldn't sue me at the wazoo.
Yeah,
well, they won't. I mean, they're not going to care about one little shirt.
Especially if it's a gift. Now, maybe if you started making money off of it, that'd be different.
Yeah.
But.
So, Nick, the Ravensloft Mueller says, All-Star, don't hate me, but I love this series. It's so terrible that it's funny and great, but it's so bad.
Yes, so bad that it's good.
It's so offbeat, weird, and nonsensical, all while trying to be really gritty and hard. It does try really hard to be gritty and hard.
It does.
And I have such a hard time understanding, like, what happened with this series. Because, like, I've read Miller's stuff where he's genuinely, like, great noir stuff. And, like, what's going on with this story?
I think what it does is it illustrates that something that has gone over our heads in the past. And that is that Miller's style is much less obviously the same as Liefeld's. He is from the 80s, and he's trying to do that dark, gritty, but also kill dudes type of atmosphere. We just never noticed it.
Well, that doesn't match Sin City, and that doesn't match Dark Knight.
Yeah, and Sin City's great.
I think, honestly, I have a suspicion, and this is part of my take on it. Let's talk a little bit about what's in the story before we get to this.
It could just be that he's getting old.
Maybe some of that.
I mean,
I feel though. I guess I'm gonna. I don't know how to get back to the subject here. I feel like this comic, in some ways, is penance for Holy Terror.
What?
I don't know.
I could see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
But
I
think
feel like it's right in line with Holy Terror in that it's him doubling down on his insistence that this is how you do Batman right, and everybody else who came before me is wrong.
But that's not the situation with it, right?
Oh,
It's
but it
like
is. He
he's
said
not even.
himself that this was supposed to be a deconstruction of Batman.
This
Now, of
isn't
course, that's
even
not what he
this-
actually gave us. It's more like he threw it in a blender and just poured it out on the table. But
right. But that's part of what I'm saying is this is not even Batman as he has done Batman before.
I think it's him finally pushing it to the nth degree that he thinks it deserves. I think one step before that, Holy Terror was his attempt to do so, and now he's just doubling down on it.
But I think that every pathology that we see here, everything bad about this book, was also there in Dark Knight 2, the DK2
Oh,
that he came out
I'm
with
sure
in
the entire
2001.
Dark Knight series is part
And
of it.
I've not
But
read.
he's
DK2.
slowly been getting worse and worse. Is my point.
Yeah, but I mean, we at least the Dark Knight from 1986, is it?
Yeah, 6, some of it.
Yeah, that is.
That was
I
his
mean,
first
maybe
attempt
maybe
at
it
that,
just
right?
maybe it just surprised us because it was so different, and maybe it isn't
Right.
good if we go back and reread it because it does kind of have the throw everything at the wall in a loose plot, that doesn't really hold together very well.
And it's probably his first attempt at, trying to break the system and
Yeah.
reinvent him. And he's just been getting a little heavier handed each time he does it for the last
See,
30 years.
my interpretation is that in the middle of this run, he was already turning 50.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think his writing ability just started to wane in his years as he got older.
Oh, I'm
Well,
sure.
And you
as a
see that even
55-year-old.
further and further into like the tens and stuff. Like, have you read
Let's-
Xerxes?
No, I've not read Xerxes. I haven't read 300.
Don't.
Either. I saw
By
the
the
film and I was so upset with the film that I
And
people are just like, because the real story of Thermopylae is way more interesting than 300.
Oh yeah,
And-
for sure.
And the fact that that like it became and it's such a forgotten piece of history. For it to be the only thing that people know about Sparta is 300, and to just be taking that as like gospel writ. And
Yeah.
yes, Gerard Butler is a badass in that film, but like he's the only good thing about it. Like, everything else about it's crap. Everything else about it's crap.
Some of the set piecing's pretty good. Like from like a technical standpoint.
Okay, yes, and there's some of the cinematography isn't bad either. But
Yeah,
I mean, once again,
I like
what's
the
his bucket?
narrator. The
What's his
narrator, narrator's the guy from Lord of the Rings, the Faramir.
Yeah.
I never realized that. That's the guy who's doing
okay.
the narrating, and I love the end. I love 300, even though it's nonsense. It's not really the story of what happened. But as
That's
a
a fair
story,
opinion.
it's interesting. I think that Frank Miller does very well on his own, not doing DC Comics or Marvel characters, but doing his own stuff, which is why
well,
I
his-
always agree with that.
why
yeah.
his Sin
not
City is so
include-
good.
But let's
What?
not include Holy Terror in there because it's actually just him trying to do Batman.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that was a Batman. It was Holy Terror Batman.
I think though it's fine to just do your own take on something that is like, this is the way I wanted this character to be. It's like, yeah, but that's not the character, so it would be
Right.
better just to do your own character.
So-
I
That's like
agree
one.
because
one of-
I've got plenty of these I could do that with, but you must understand I would be going at it from the perspective of, guys, this is something you've never seen before, and it's not for everyone. This is an experimental piece, right? And it should never be considered canon to the original.
Right.
So
Yeah.
one of the things. So let's step back just a little bit from the story and let's talk a little bit about some of the bones, right? Before we start talking about any meat or any opinions or set dressings on it.
Mhm.
What this is yet another retelling of Batman Year 3, right? The death of the Graysons, the coming about of Robin, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I found so irritating about it is that the 4 issues that I read could easily have been reduced to like 20 pages of content. There's so much fluff and so much filler, and we're introduced in the first book to Alfred and Batman, and Dick
Vicky
Grayson,
Vale.
and Vicky Vale. And Vicky Vale is like drawn like in the moment before orgasm in every single panel she's in.
Yep.
And it's so
The infamous
damned
underwear
irritating.
Yeah.
Right.
It's beyond cheesecake. It's
Yeah.
just every shot of her is a cheesecake shot, and it's like I argue for putting pretty women in comic books and not but at the same time this is so gratuitous. It's agonizing. Same with the Black Mary.
One of the other things about it is that like the internal monologue of every character sounds exactly the same. And there's lots of internal monologue with the story that is just so really irritating. And the Gotham that Miller is drawing from has so much less to do with Gotham, and is just it feels less like Gotham and more like Sin City. I mean, it really is. It's the grittiness of Gotham, like turned up to like the B side of a well, actually no, the B side of a Tom Waits album is still more hopeful than anything in the first 4 issues of this book. And that includes Frank's Wild Years.
Well, could I do a little summary of issue 1 for everybody who hasn't read it?
Please do.
Issue 1 is about the Vicky. It starts with a long backstory of Vicky Vale getting ready for a date with Bruce Wayne, which turns out to be the circus. And right away, Bruce Wayne is like, "Look at that kid! I've been keeping my eye on him for years." And it's like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "This kid he's got martial arts training. He's a really good acrobat. I've been keeping an eye on him." And he's telling Vicky Vale this, even though she doesn't know he's Batman. And then it's like, so he's already planning to make this kid Robin, which is a complete reversal of every portrayal so far, where he just wants to save this kid from the kid. He overhears that his parents were killed as a payoff because the what do you call it? The owner of the circus wouldn't pay up to the mob. And so they needed to bump somebody off. And they bumped off both his parents. And he goes, "Why? I'm going to go in there." And Batman's like, "No." And he saves him from what, that guy would just get killed. If he went to the sheriff works for the mob, he would get killed. So he's saving Dick Grayson by taking him away. But he doesn't want him to be Robin. Way back in the 40s, he did. Modern telling, it's like it makes sense if he doesn't want him to be Robin. But now you've got him going, "I'm going to train this kid, and he's going to be my protege." And then he just happens to have his parents killed, and they don't die in an accident. They're shot. They're just shot by a killer working for the mob.
Well, and in the original version, like they were killed by the mob, but it was made to look like an accident.
Right.
The whole it's a nice circus you got here. It'd be terrible if something would have happened to it, right?
Yeah.
And
accidents happen. That's why you have insurance.
Yep, exactly. that whole racket. And so in this version, it's just a shooter out of nowhere, and like in front of like hundreds of people, right?
Yeah.
And then later on in issue 4, it's revealed that like Batman's going out investigating, cracking some heads investigating who did the killing and who ordered the killing. And he finds out that like the Gotham is so corrupt that they've already arranged to have this guy get off on the charges. And I'm like, this killing was done in front of 1,000 people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like there isn't no.
Well, remember, in the same universe,
said.
I don't believe you, Frank.
Remember, I think it's in issue 2 or 3 that Batman he's getting away with Robin in the Batmobile, and there's a police blockade, and he turns on the rockets, right, and basically rockets up into the sky, and there's this blast of fire that literally takes out several of these policemen, killing them.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, Batman just killed people? Not to mention he killed police. And when Robin pushes it, the whole explanation is all police in Gotham are corrupt, so this is okay.
Yeah.
Right. That is the world we're being given by Miller here.
Yep. There's only
Once
one
again,
good cop. Yeah.
Which we have one. There's only one good cop. Once again, it's not Gotham, right? It's Sin City, right? The
Yeah.
idea of a city that's so corrupt that like the cops won't even. I mean, like I used to work for a guy who, in a previous life, he was a security guard for a private company that was hired by the federal government to do the policing in a housing project in Kansas City. And the cops wouldn't go in to the housing project because of all the violence. So they hired rent-a-cops to go in there for them. And so my old boss, he would go in, they would do investigations, they would arrest people, they take them to the edge of the projects and then hand people over to the police. But because of the way the unions were, the police wouldn't actually go into the projects. So that's the kind of framing that we're setting up here. But it's like I just don't believe it. I just don't.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
and it
the,
gets worse.
this
You want
is
some spoilers.
this is why, but this is one of the reasons that why I am on board with the idea that this is penance for
Holy Terror.
specifically penance for Holy Terror is that this version of Batman. Well, I want to say something that I enjoyed about the story, the first 4 issues, is it actually shows Batman enjoying things, right?
Like killing cops. Yeah.
Well, not just killing cops, but also like he enjoying driving his car. He's reveling in the technology.
Yeah.
Everything that he's involved in, there's a gusto to it.
Okay, listen.
And you never
Batman
see.
must never use the word cool.
I
You understand?
don't disagree with that, but I'm not on that right now, right? I'm just trying to say like the fact.
In what
they
context?
What?
He says should never use the word cool. What if he's talking about the temperature? What
And
if
he
it's
should
important
say
to
it's
solving a
below
crime?
warm.
You know, like I don't know. I think that's a really stupid statement to make.
No,
Yeah.
he should say it's not hot.
Yeah, no, I don't think Batman should try to impress a child by trying to get on his level and talk kid slang, which is what Miller.
Oh, that's
was
a
trying to
better
make
statement to
Batman do.
make.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
different. For example, if Batman, in a different version of the story, Batman takes Dick down to the Batcave and Dick says, "Man, this is really cool," and Batman can say, "Yes, it's cool," right? But one of the things we have here, I didn't want to get into this yet, because I was wanting to lay out the thing I like about it was that is that Batman is shown to enjoy things. There's this idea of gusto to his life. But every time you get this mask slip, right? This idea of that. One of the things that you ended up having was that Batman would like reverse it, right? Because he's demanding that Dick thinks it's cool, and if Dick pushes back, oh, I hate that kid. But you've just spent like 10 pages talking about how impressed you are with this kid, and now you're like, no, I hate him because he because I'm thin-skinned and weak, and I can't have a child disagree with me, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like so. That's
Miller
what I
loves
think.
to use the word "shut up." It's like
Yeah.
every other page you've seen it 15 times.
Right.
Yeah.
And the idea that like when he also openly says, like Batman goes in and rescues, there's this whole sequence in the first issue where the crooked cops took Dick to go have him killed because he saw the shooter. Well, tons of people saw the shooter, but let's ignore that for a second.
Yeah.
Because Dick saw the shooter, and so they can't have any witnesses, and so they're going to go kill this kid because they're also working for whoever paid the shooter to kill the parents.
Yeah.
Right? And so Batman rescues him, and then he gets in the car, and he doesn't like. So there are more cops that are coming in, so he picks Dick up and he throws him in the car, and they take off running away from the cops that are chasing him down. Okay? So he saves Dick's life. Then, in every scene in the next 2 issues where Batman and Dick are in the car together, and every scene they're in the next 2 issues is just them in the car.
Yep.
It's the longest car ride ever. A car ride becomes a plane ride, becomes a submarine ride.
Yep.
It's just like
Mhm.
it's like what the heck? Anyway, so which is just it's just like okay. It's
We really need some pictures here.
we do.
Yeah.
We should have pulled pictures up.
And you kind of skip past what is the most notorious element of this that everybody was talking about, which is that when he says, "Who are you?" he says, "What are you, retarded? Are you in? Are you
the
stupid?
famous
Are you
line.
retarded? I am the goddamn Batman," which is what everybody had heard about. And then I didn't realize what I didn't realize is that he says that every time he says his name is Batman, he says the goddamn Batman. He says that all the time throughout all 10 issues.
And then other characters start referring to it. It's like this
Yeah.
meme that he's throwing in.
See, I only picked it up the first time on there, but
Yeah. Maybe nobody read it past that second issue. And
maybe
didn't
that's
know
part
he
of it.
did
Well,
it.
anyway,
Yeah.
so what I was getting at though is that there's this whole thing, and Batman repeatedly says in his internal monologue, "I've kidnapped and terrorized this child. I've kidnapped and terrorized this child." And it's just like, well, you saved his life, and like there's all of these like hoops that are jumping through, and it's just sort of like like Batman talks about how in issue 3, I think, or maybe it was 4, he talks about how like I'd wanted to recruit Dick into fighting crime when he was older, but now that he's now that his parents are killed, everything has to change, right? Everything has to change, and like okay, so that kind of makes sense. But you still have you front loaded all of it with this thoughts of terrorizing and kidnapping a child, but the narrative doesn't call for that particular introspection because he was about to be killed by crooked cops. So it's just like Frank can't decide if Batman's a villain. Is he jolly? Is he an emotionally crippled asshole?
He leaves Dick Grayson in the cave without lights for the night and says, "I'm leaving you here." And he's like, "What am I supposed to eat?" And he says, "There's
Food,
rats all around
wolves.
here. There's rats and bats all around here." And Alfred comes in, puts a blanket on him, and brings him food on a plate. And he says, "I'm not going to be with you in subjecting this kid to, sleeping on an icy floor and eating rats." And he says, "Why not? I did." And it's like, it's very abusive. Batman's very abusive in this. It's
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Bruce, you chose to.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And what follows that is that basically he's got him up against the wall, right?
Mhm.
Batman is throwing Alfred against the wall. Alfred actually stands up to him and says, "I'm not your slave. Don't you dare try to tell me what to do." And so then Batman monologues to himself, "This little brat is going to ruin everything."
Yeah.
He is constantly saying things like this throughout the entire series about how awful this kid is. All of this is messed up. He's going to destroy everything, while at the same time trying to constantly reminding us how much work he's done specifically to recruit him and only him. Which is it, Bruce? Did you want this kid because he's the perfect specimen, or is he a total inconvenience that you wish you could have out of your life?
Well, and
Sounds
that's
more
comes
like
to the thing
Gru
is-
from Despicable Me 5 years before it came out.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and even then, even with Gru from Despicable Me, right? Like,
At least he's a bad guy.
Well, he's a bad guy, but not only that, there is this idea where he it's a part of his plan gone awry, right? Where
Right.
Yeah.
he's
what even is Bruce's plan?
Right. And for Gru from Despicable Me, he's such a misanthrope. He doesn't understand human interaction at all, and so the only friends he's had are these from the first movie. These ones he's created, right? These minions he created from the first. That was the conceit from the first.
And
movie.
his personal tech scientist guy, who
right,
lives in the lab. Yeah,
right. And so all of this just yes men, and so all of a sudden he's presented with this other thing, and so he can start to learn some of the immaterial goods of parenthood, and of society from these little girls. But that's not part of the girls weren't part of his broader plan. They were a subset, right? But with with this one, Robin is the plan. It just wasn't Robin today. And so it's just like, what on earth is it's so it really is like this thing reads like a fan fiction that a 17-year-old would write.
So this is also as far as I ever got in the series, right? Like I was reading it back in the day, and I put it down after he threw Alfred around. I'm like, this is all this stuff has been out of character already, but this is like the single most out of character thing for Batman to be like basically tossing around the guy who is his replacement father.
Well,
You know, like,
and even then,
I
the
don't
idea
think
that,
Batman
like,
would ever do that.
Well,
even
you
the
haven't
idea
even
that
got to how he treats Superman.
well, the way he treated Superman is not. There have been portrayals that were somewhat like that. But I was a little irritated that that you have this whole in issue 4. There's this whole sequence where Batman, talks about what a great detective he is and how smart he is, and like we've seen none of that on the page.
Yeah.
Well, it's even worse
And
because
the reason there's no room for I'm sorry, one second, let me finish this up here. The reason there's no room for it on the page is there's so much thrown away exposition. There's so much. It's honestly like this comic was Frank Miller. Like if you had a Frank Miller AI, right? That would fart out a plot, and then early Brian Michael Bendis then turned it into a script, right? Like before Bendis had the wherewithal to write like block text in comics, his Spider Ultimate Spider-Man scripts were not they were somewhat sparse for dialogue. They were placed well, but like the original 12-page Spider-Man story, he told in like 6 months of comics, and this has that same kind of decompression in it, where like the first 4 issues, there is nothing that happens in there that you couldn't make happen in like a single comic book.
In like 6 pages.
Yeah. Well, some of it, some of it, like there was some of the, if you wanted to have the talk about the Vicky Vale storyline and her, surviving the car wreck and then having the surgery and all that kind of stuff, you could, that would take a page or 2 to get through. But, but yeah, there's so much, and there's a lot of it is because there's all this repetition in the thing. It's just like,
I've always hated how Frank just keeps repeating the same lines over and over and over again.
It was
anytime there's what's it called, narration.
It's a good trick to pull out of a box every once and again, right? Like I think there are a lot of moments in Holy Terror where Frank's repetition actually reinforced the drama of the story. However, it does not fit Batman or his world, or the fact that this is a high. There's not anything in the story that's supposed to be this plotting, drama-filled moments, right? Everything is action, action, action. It's supposed to feel like 24, right? All of this, plot point, plot point, plot point, plot point. And it's supposed to be this breakneck pace to the thing, and you slow it down by having, like issue 3, Black Canary shows up, but it's not really Black Canary, but it's Black Canary, and she's gonna say the same thing and repeat all of the insults that she's heard, and it's gonna go on for 12 pages of her getting into a bar fight and thinking sweet cheeks, honey, baby, sexy thing, la da da, sweet cheeks. And then the greatest line in that whole thing is like one of the routine, like sexist comments that people say is sweet chunks. I have never I've never in any bar or any rodeo or any construction site heard any guy holler out to a girl sweet chunks. Not once. Never.
That's the one that sets her off, though. That's the one. It's crazy that what really bothers me is that this is the All-Star thing is basically DC Comics taking a creator and saying you get to do your own little universe based on the DC universe, but it doesn't have to line up with anything else. You tell Batman how you would like to tell it. You can feature DC Comics characters. It's like, this is a wonderful opportunity. It's basically what you get to do whenever you start an animated series. Whether it's Batman Brave and the Bold or Batman the Animated Series or the Batman or whatever, it's like you get to start over with your own version of the DC universe. And it's like they give him the chance and he just craps all over it. I mean, I would love the opportunity to have my own little Batman series that tells Robin from the beginning, and he just wastes it with this ridiculous garbage.
Honestly, he was probably drunk the entire time that he wrote this. No, because he had like a serious alcoholism problem. Nearly died of it shortly after this run was done.
Okay.
Right? He actually was probably plastered the entire time he wrote this story.
That knowing that, maybe we don't even need to review it because it is written like it's a drunk version of the Frank Miller from the 1980s.
Okay,
that's probably why there's a lot of the repetition too, right? Because he's like thinking of cool thing and he's drunk. He probably doesn't even remember that he already thought of it.
Well, and so here's the thing that makes it so sad, right? Is because I don't care if you're Frank Miller, if you're writing for DC Comics, you have editors, and the editor's job.
Well, we've talked about that before. Yeah,
that the company's quality does not suffer the fate that that does not suffer the fate of great artists. Right?
Yeah. And this is editors of the early. It's not even 2010, right? What year was this? This came out. It's
2008, I think.
It's exactly when all the good editors had left, and all the ones they were getting in were the ones that a lot of the old writers couldn't work with, and they weren't the kinds of people who are really good comic book editors.
So I got to point out some stuff from the chat. It's just cracking me up. I know we're got an interview, but I got to go over here. So I know we've got some comment. We're off topic, but I just have to hit it. Abigail says, "Sweet Chunks is crazy. That would make me mad too. Sweet Chunks. What does that even mean? Sad robot. I think I know that guy. He says, Sweet Chunks sounds like a cereal they'd have in the background of a newspaper comic, which is one of the best things I've ever heard. I think talking about the drink, Abigail says that makes a whole lot of sense. The Stephen King model or method, but with alcohol instead of cocaine.
Yeah, that's actually something that he was talking about like very recently. I think a lot of articles with interviews of this was 2024. So just like last year, he was talking about how basically after 9/11, he became an alcoholic and it just like progressively got worse. Which I guess is another standpoint for 9/11 ruining comics.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been
and
said.
Twitless isn't even here to talk about it.
Yeah, but then Dark Knight 2 was before 9/11, and it was just as bad.
True.
Yeah. But alcoholism can take your already negative aspects and then make it worse. So it's like compounding
that's how
on
he
top
became.
of it.
Yeah. He was really drinking a lot, and then he became an alcoholic.
It's been said that Miller is an angry old man sitting on a park bench, yelling at young people to get a haircut. Only instead of the young people are actually the previous Batman writers of the past, right?
So Isaac says, a girl's ready for anything, and then you hit her with Sweet Chunks. That'll stick in her head for a few years.
Are we sure that wasn't just a misprint, a typo?
Sweet Cheeks could be.
Yeah.
He says it 10 times. He says it 10
Sweet
times.
Chunks is
really?
great if you like them thick.
Yeah. Black Canary's in the bar, and for page after page, there's just all these male comments about, bad pickup lines and Sweet Chunks and hey, sweetie, and over here, honey. And it's just peppered constantly with them coming on to her.
I will tell you,
over the pages and pages. Hang on. And then they say Sweet Chunks, Sweet Chunks, Sweet Chunks. And then she leaves the bar goes out as Black Canary and somebody calls her Sweet Chunks. It's not even the same guys. It's like somebody else is calling her Sweet Chunks, which I had the same thought. It's like, I've never heard anybody use this. And she gets it from everywhere. And that's the one that sets her off, which is really weird.
Yeah, you're right. They're even just separating down to just chunks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's
funny.
just,
yeah.
I don't think she's thick enough to call Sweet Chunks, honestly.
yeah.
She needs a little more on
Would
them
you mind-
thighs.
Would you mind showing the Vicky Vale getting dressed images from issue 1? I mean,
I
not
will
for
show-
Lauren purposes, but
I will show the absolute least ridiculous image, and that is all. All righty.
okay.
This is the most innocent Vicky Vale image that you're going to see in this scene here. Okay, it gets so much worse after that, and it turns out we actually have his original script and instructions to the illustrator. I'm going to read them for you here.
Okay.
And
And I can explain the Sweet Chunks thing after he explains that.
Okay.
bra and panties and not 1 inch of clothing more. Walks, no, heck, she struts. Detail her bra, it'll drive them crazy, Jim. Give us an even better angle on the babe. She knows what she's got. Make them drool. Okay, Jim, I'm shameless. Let's go with an A shot. Panties details, balloons from above. We can't take our eyes off her, especially since she's got one fine A. These are literal directions to, I mean, my gosh, the poor illustrator, right? Like, can you imagine getting this and having to read it?
Jim Lee.
Yeah, Jim Lee has no problem drawing.
No,
any naked
but can
woman.
you imagine getting this and having to read it and being, okay, what am I doing to, what the heck?
I didn't realize I picked up the Playboy job.
Right? Like, I didn't think I'd get a dick, what's it called in college? Shoot. It's
It reminds me of I read an interview with Kevin Nolan a number 20 years ago. He was talking about doing all sorts of
dissertation. That's the word I was looking for.
I see dissertation on nudity. That's funny. Kevin Nolan was talking about just working all over drawing, for whoever pays. And he did a feature for Playboy, and somebody asked him what that was like, and he's like, "Well, you draw nudes in college, so it's not like it's a big deal. But I got to research 1950s tractors, and that was really fun."
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The Superman Wonder Woman thing. See, that ties in with his
I always hated that.
Dark Knight 2 thing where they're having a kid together, and it's just it's just
This is
all set up.
after
Yeah.
She has balled them all out like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah.
Made no secret of her absolute, just visceral hatred for men of all types and all thinks they're all a bunch of idiots and losers. And then all it takes is like one kiss from him, and okay.
Yeah.
Well, he's Superman.
Yeah.
When I
It's
read
a super kiss.
The Dark Knight back in the 80s, there was that wonderful shot of Superman. He's like, you're gonna make all these problems again. They dragged us out, and you were psychotic while we were all trying to get along, and Diana went back to her people. Hal went to the stars, and I've walked the razor's edge for so long. It was like, just right there, it just said the Justice League all left and went away, and I'm the only one. I've been serving the government and not happy about it, but it's the only way I can get to do what I do. And it's like, that's all I want to know about Superman. And then the Dark Knight 2 came out, and it has everybody and explanations of everything of what they're up to. And Barry Allen, who was dead at the time, you remember, is like alive in that world. And it's like, it's just weird. Dark Knight 2 was so weird. And this is the same thing. It's like his take on Hal Jordan is abusive. It's just terrible. And he keeps calling him an idiot. Says he's an idiot with a ring.
Yeah.
And then he he confronts him painted yellow, and everything in the room is painted yellow. And it's like, I'm sure Hal has dealt with how many villains who've tried this, but
There's actually a
Frank Miller
hilarious
thinks it's
detail
genius.
about that.
What's that?
I'm going to bring that up too. There's actually a hilarious detail about that. I'm trying to remember which issue was that here.
Go ahead. I said my piece. I don't like his take on the DC characters, but obviously this doesn't have to align with anybody else's take on
here,
DC
here we go.
characters. But
I'm going to put up another
I hate it.
picture here. I mean, they paint everything in yellow, right?
Yeah.
Including his teeth.
Yeah.
Are you saying he was like, what? Was he just in there with a paintbrush painting his teeth? Did he just drink a cup of yellow paint?
Spray paint.
What?
Just real quick.
He's witness me.
Is that
Exactly what I was
paint on his
thinking.
teeth, right? What about his eyes?
Witness me.
Well, obviously, they're lenses.
Yeah.
But hey, you can't give him anywhere to go, right? You got to protect the eyes. Got Green Lantern. He could just rip the teeth out if you didn't paint him yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And then Robin goes and way overdoes it, ends up totally, giving him a throat punch. Batman has to give him a tracheotomy. It's like, what is going on with this comic?
Well, I do want to say that the one thing about this there's two things I guess about it. It did show the classic Robin costume, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it works. It still works. Everybody says, "Oh, it's too silly." No, man.
The classic Robin costume.
It's fine. It's fine. You got the little shorts. You got the pixie boots. It's a perfectly fine costume.
There's something I definitely want to bring up about this issue, and it sums up what Miller apparently thinks about Batman, and it's this. Batman seems, in Miller's mind, hates all other superheroes. He's jealous of them for the fact that they have powers and he doesn't, and he feels if only he had had their powers, he would have whipped this world into shape long ago, and there'd be no problems.
Mm-hmm.
Like, great. Batman the Tyrant. Wow.
Yeah.
Can we get any?
Yeah, I didn't care for it.
Yeah.
So in short, is All-Star Batman and Robin any good? Not really.
It's good to talk about.
It's good to remind you that never meet your heroes.
In some ways, it's so bad it's good, but then again, I mean, we all talk about surviving through it, so it's still a hard read.
Yeah. It's good in that it really helps us to define what is important about Batman, because we all look at this and go, "This is not right," and so we all we all say Batman is not this, and so we agree. We all agree what Batman is.
Because normally we've talked about the three Batmans, right? It's like many people cannot agree on who they want Batman to be. There's all these different variations. The one thing we can agree on is nobody wants this.
Well, and
right?
one of the
whatever
things
this is.
Well, and one of the things is too, when you get into the Batcave, and like even a lot of the stuff about the Batmobile and a lot of the even parts of the dialogue, they are riffing on the Super Friends. They're riffing on the 66 series. And it's like Frank has spent so much time like trying to, or an emotional energy and thought through the years and investing in staking his flag in being like the anti-66 thing. Right?
Yeah, right.
But he can't shake, like the 66 Batman has stayed popular, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like he can't really shake the impact, the social impact of that. So he still ends up going into that 66 well in dealing with Robin, right?
Yeah.
And even in Dark Knight, even in Dark Knight Returns, right? There's still a ton of comedy that makes its way into it. Even though you could probably classify that work as anti-camp, but when it's good, there's still a comedy element. There's still some humor that works into that. And I would say from our recent reading of Batman Year One, the places um where year one refuses levity, refuses to break the stress, are the parts where year one like falters. And like I said, there are moments in the first two issues, where Batman is just really enjoying certain elements or certain moments, and like I didn't hate it for those couple of seconds, and then he'd turn around and be a jerk, and I'd hate it again. But
can I point out that we were talking about how it ties in with year one, because it talks about how it's got Sarah Essen referred to a number of times. It makes numerous references to elements of year one.
Oh.
And yet, if you remember, Batman year one was very down to earth. Batman has a motorcycle, and he doesn't even have like a Batmobile yet. He just, he has cars he takes in. And between that and All-Star Batman and Robin, he has robots that are building the Batcave constantly because it needs to be built out so much because there's so many trophies. There's 20 Batmobiles scattered around already, despite the fact he hasn't even had a Robin yet. It's like these robots are constantly building the Batcave because he does so much stuff, and it's like I don't like that fantasy. I don't like that. Batman is not that kind of. That's so cartoonish. It's like Batman does not have that much money to have robots who just go around building his stuff. It's
remember, this is Miller. He does not know how to be subtle. This is what he does.
So let me ask you. I had earlier proffered that that this is in some ways feels like a shame ritual, for having written a Holy Terror. But
are you saying that he's doing this to himself, or somebody did this to him?
I'm saying I think he's doing it to. I said my theory is that he's doing it to himself
because he didn't like how Holy Terror turned out, or what?
He didn't like how people responded to Holy Terror.
Oh, okay.
I don't think. I think he wrote it as a catharsis, and other people didn't appreciate his catharsis, and so I think that this was, well, I have to. If I can't use my version of Batman cathartically, then I'm going to destroy Batman, and or something along those lines. Not in like a vile way, but in a penance way. And even when you hear him talk about Holy Terror, he's just like he has these sort of apologetic tones to it. It's like, well, I wouldn't write that today.
But the problem is there are things in this that push even farther than Holy Terror.
Yeah, there are definitely aspects of it that are farther than Holy Terror.
I'm gonna go back. I just think he was destroying himself in both aspects, and it just kept getting worse.
Yeah, you may have something like that too. But the other side of it, though, there's I think I wanna get your opinion on a second concept, right? So, Batman Year One, right? This is Miller's 20 years later sequel to Batman Year One. It's plainly there. Because characters that no one else has touched, like Flash, he's bringing back, right? Mm-hmm. But there already is a perfectly solid sequel to Batman Year One, and I want to go over it. It's Long Halloween, right?
Yeah.
Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale picked up where Year One left off and told the story of Year Two. Dark Victory is Year Three, right? And then this is Year Three, right? And Wolfman's Year Three is not it's a spiritual sequel in that it tells Dick's first year, but so much of Wolfman's Year Three is taking place in modern year, right? That it's not really in this quite the same spirit as Year
like
One.
An alternate world three or Year Three, yeah.
Well, yeah, because it's a year. Wolfman's Year Three is split between Dick's origin and the fallout of Dick's origin 15 years later now, or 10 years later, now that he's an adult, now that Tony Zuko is about to get out of prison, all this other kind of stuff. So there's a modern whodunit, and then there's flashbacks to the past. And so it's 4 issues, but it's not like all in timeline with like that Year Three feel. Whereas Dark Victory is just it's follows up directly on Long Halloween, following up directly on Year One, right? But while I'm getting back to the idea, do you think that even going back to this well is Miller trying to like outdo what Loeb and Sale did in his sandbox?
I think there's probably a possibility. It's just hard to know, knowing the state he was in at the time. Hard to know how cognizant even he was of his motivations.
Well,
you know?
like I said, he himself called it a deconstruction. So he definitely knew what he was doing. In my opinion, it wasn't a deconstruction as much as he dropped it on the floor and played 52 card pickup.
Mm-hmm.
But he was definitely, he understood that people, my guess is he understood people probably wouldn't want this. And so his excuse is to be able to say, oh, well, it's deconstruction.
Well, I agree that he probably knew his intentions. I don't agree that he knew why he intended it. Right? I think the motivating factor probably was something that was more subconscious than conscious.
Well, see, there's a bit of a pattern here anyway, because I don't know about you, I don't know of a single thing that Miller has ever done with Batman that was not originally intended to be, an alternate side, an Elseworld, non-canon type of thing going on, right?
Year one.
Miller did Year one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Year one was canon.
I forgot.
It was very, very canon.
Okay,
yeah.
You're right.
Yep. But other than that, I can't think of anything specifically.
Yeah, it just seems he's always, deliberately doing something that is supposed to be unique. And I can understand why DC would let him do it that way rather than, touch the goods, essentially.
Well, I mean, he usually sells pretty good. That's the other thing, too, is, he's got that going for him.
Well, and I can't remember exactly what happened that he never finished this, but I do think it has to do with how fast they were getting stuff out. So I think this may have been he wasn't getting the work done fast enough, or they kept having to... Maybe, oh my gosh, can you imagine a world where the editors were doing their job and this is the result? This is the 15th try.
Yeah. He does this take on the Joker that it directly ties into, I mean, he even has the henchwoman with the swastikas over her nipples.
Yeah.
And this is in, before Dark Knight Returns. And I hate his take on the Joker, but it doesn't really matter because, there's nothing past issue 10, so you don't really see what he was going to do with him. But it's so bad.
There is one horrible line that he gives.
This woman has a one-night stand with the Joker and doesn't know that he's the Joker. I mean, what?
They give him a dragon tattoo on his back.
Yeah.
They're going for the edge here, right? Then, now, first of all, this was interesting. When was this made? Because this looks exactly like, what's his name?
Joaquin Phoenix.
Yes.
It looks like Joaquin Phoenix, but it's not. When, he wasn't the Joker at the time.
Yeah, and like Joaquin Phoenix, we've got the Joker doing what is usually Batman's job of doing all the angsting and brooding, right? And he literally says, where is it? I'm trying to remember, where's the stupid line? It's got to be on that first page. Yeah, they call me the Joker, but I'm not very funny. Excuse me? What? The Joker isn't funny and Batman laughs. What kind of messed up world is this?
Yeah, because it doesn't really matter if the Joker's funny or not. He thinks he's a hoot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Even in the Joaquin Phoenix not Joker movie, right? The idea is that he's decided to see all the world as a joke because he can't
Right.
So,
At least there's a
right.
separation
Mhm.
between the version of him originally and who he becomes. Right. Here it's like Walking Phoenix is the Joker. He's one and the same. What? Yeah, that was like, okay, you just broke my brain here.
Yeah.
Now, if it was
That's what
played
I
right,
thought when
though,
I looked at him. I'm like, that's Joaquin Phoenix, but it doesn't make sense.
Right.
if it was
That's
played
insane.
right,
Yeah.
I kind of like the idea of Joker just randomly getting a dragon tattoo. If it was like played off as a joke, like, "Hey, Bats, like my new tattoo? I thought it was pretty ridiculous." Just like a non sequitur in the middle of a fight, he just shows it to him, try to distract him. It's like, "Oh, you set this up as a distraction like 3 weeks ago." It's like, yeah.
See, I feel like he'd get a tattoo of Batman and have, an arrow through a heart, be like, hey, sweetie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He would have a
So-
cartoon image of Batman's
Hmm.
severed head or something.
But Batman
like that.
would
Yeah.
expect that. He wouldn't expect the dragon tattoo.
That's true.
You got to get in his head.
Well, then he'd have like a tattoo of Batman. I mean, of Robin have a severed head or something.
So here's
Right.
so Jim Tuner's theory or idea about the series, why it ended so abruptly. He tried to remake Batman in that series, but by the time he stopped, it was clear it wasn't working. It wasn't Batman at the end of it anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
could
it
be.
wasn't Batman.
and
at the
Isaac
beginning.
Larkin, I believe, is commenting on the "Hey Bats, check out my dragon tattoo." Batman, cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's grand.
That
is
actually
grand.
would be the way to diffuse it, though, right? He looks at it and be like, "Actually, I think it's pretty cool."
It's a dragon tail.
It's like you take it seriously, even though he was trying to make a joke out of it. Completely ruined Joker's day.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the one good thing about this comic. It's not drawn by Miller, right? Like we actually have some fairly good art when he's not drawing Vicky Vale, or Black Canary. We started this evening talking about what went down on Heroes Con, and I've been reminded of one other event that happened. This is interesting. Along with some of the drama, Graham Nolan got critiqued for apparently drawing his sound effect here outside the bounds of the word bubble.
which is
And
awesome.
People are convinced this was a misprint, right? Which
Anybody who thinks that was a misprint doesn't read comics and should be ignored.
I think it's ridiculous, but there are a ton of people jumping on him, yada yada yada. And I was going to stay out of it until
That's a great bubble too.
just
Yeah, it's
today.
great. It's marvelous.
Here I am, trying to finish up this comic, right? And on issue 7, I look and say, "Wait a minute!" And there it is. And then he proceeds to do this. Whoops, where'd it go? Lost my place.
I've done bubbles like that myself. A lot
I
of
have
people do it as
too.
a stylistic choice.
Yeah.
He starts
it's
doing it
classic.
all over the place.
See, okay,
Right?
look at this. Look at these. Go back to the page before this.
Yeah.
You try to tell me that this is not like 1966 stuff, like influence stuff, right?
Well,
With
it's
the
not
pals
because
and
he's
everything,
killing
just
all
getting
these
in
guys,
your face.
letting them die and everything. So
Well, yeah, there's that, of course, but I'm talking about in terms of the way they're using sound effects.
Like you could play the
Oh,
old
yeah.
like 60s sound effects, like the bam, like right to each of these.
that would be funny.
Skruck.
But like this is like talked about how those balloons are used. This is such a good choice, right?
Mhm.
Because the sounds that the person are making are supposed to be so impactful that they have the weight of a sound effect, but you need to be able to know the difference between what are the ambient sound effects and what are the sounds a person's making. So the
Yeah.
balloon is the perfect choice to put behind that sound effect there. I don't know why anyone would have trouble deciphering what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the same thing with that Grant page. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like
You mean Graham?
Graham, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just people being petty. That's all that is.
But it was just
Yeah.
amazing. I was able to get on there and say, well, okay, so we've actually got a professionally produced DC comic here, and they're doing it all over the place. So
Yeah. I think whoever was pointing that out was just being ridiculous because
Yeah.
that's a
well, I
legit.
think it's still part of all that comic skate stuff where all these people have hated each
Yeah.
other for years, and they will jump on each other for anything.
Yeah.
People look for excuses to lie about other people, and that's crap.
I think we've all
Mhm.
done that word balloon thing. Even I have.
I also
And
think-
I haven't printed much.
I,
but
I have
did.
not, but now I kind of want to.
I think comic literacy is also lower, even amongst these people who claim to be comic fans, because I don't think
Yeah.
most of them have read comics in a long time.
Or even if they have read comics, they're not reading broadly.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
that too.
It's like I'm not going to sit here and say that somebody who buys that the majority of people that are buying Cyberfrog, for example, for no real reason, that they never sit and read their purchases, right? But
I
that may
do know
be
a
the
lot
only-
that don't.
But they're
Not
probably,
all of them, but there's a lot that don't.
There may be, but I'm saying is even if they are, that doesn't mean that they're reading other comics. It's like people that say, oh, that they get in that conversation manga aren't real comics, and it's just like, dude, have you?
When's the last time you read one?
You read one? Yeah, they just it's like there are cultural elements between stories that take some learning, right? But the comic literacy skills are the comic literacy skills. You don't you pick it up. Reading comics is reading comics. It doesn't matter, what order they're going in, or if you're reading them off of a vertical scroll, or if you're reading them off the web, or if you're reading them whatever. Reading comics is reading comics, and good comics is good comics. So it's just like the stuff that works in Western comics, or the stuff that works in Eastern comics, the stuff that works in French comics, the stuff that works in Italian comics, is the stuff that works in Egyptian comics. The comics is comics,
Yeah.
and there are different cliches and tools that different schools will use, but that's no different than reading what Kirby was doing versus what Siegel and Schuster were doing. It just they got or Will Eisner, they got just different tools. Batman shouldn't call crooks sweetheart. I think that depends on the crook.
Yeah.
He does right there.
Yeah.
So's this.
It sounds like
sweetheart.
something more that
Like-
Ollie should be doing.
Yeah.
Catwoman.
It's just sort of like if there was a diluted gun mall character, and who's 17, 18 years old, and Batman's like, oh honey, you deserve better than this guy. I can see Batman saying something like that.
I could see
Especially-
Bruce saying it. The thing is, he does have kind of like a persona. I don't see Batman saying that.
Mhm. I have been rewatching the Brave and the Bold cartoon series, which is such a different take on Batman. Where he's not broody at all. He's public. He it's back
He's
to the old days where
justice-driven.
he's out in public during the day, talking to the mayor. He makes announcements on TV for people, and and he's very verbose and says, "Come meet the hammers of justice." It's a very different take on Batman, and it's still Batman.
Which is
But-
which is the only way you should do it if Dietrich Bader is voicing Batman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Get him to
Yeah.
say as many things as possible.
yeah,
Oh, he's such a good voice actor.
yeah. It still works. It's still a very different take on Batman, but it's still Batman. Just
But,
because,
is it?
Yeah.
Is it very different, or is it just kind of like returning to formula
I was gonna
that
say
we've
it's
left
different from
behind
what
for a
we
long
are
time?
used to.
Because that's the Batman I know, is the justice-driven one. That's the one I like. I don't really care for
Yeah.
the vengeance-driven Batman. I think he should
Mhm.
be like an emblem of justice. He's going out to make sure the same thing doesn't happen to other people that happened to him
Yep.
as a kid.
Right.
And all those one-liners and puns he does, that's straight out of the golden age.
yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
and it's it's like one of the things that in that golden window of reading Batman between 1990 and 1997, right? When when the DC offices, the Bat offices actually allowed Bruce to heal from the trauma of Jason Todd, to bring Tim in, to start to find a little bit of balance in life personally, and focusing on the capers and the mysteries, right? So you could see, like, at the beginning of that arc, you know, you'd have Tim find pictures of Bruce and Dick going out camping, and like, why doesn't Batman smile? And then, you know, a year and a half later, Bruce and Tim are out doing a thing, and Batman is smiling in between, you know, punching crooks in the face. And you actually had this idea where you could really believe that Batman, his focus is justice, and his focus is prevention, and his focus is mercy to the victim. It's not about vengeance, right? Even vengeance in its place is only a tool to give mercy to the victims. And that's Batman. You know?
Yeah. I know I've said this before, but when I was rereading that the Obia Man story with early Tim Drake, and that this would have been very early '90s Batman. Batman is like, he's worried about Tim and his parents. He's actually concerned. He voices, you know, his concern to Alfred. He's not all inward and broody, and he's actually like, he's very emotional, and it's like, it's so weird, it's so jarring that this was normal Batman up until the 90s, the mid 90s, where it just got so dark, and Batman's pretty much a damaged person, you know, a mentally damaged person who never got over his trauma, you know.
Well, and what's so weird about this one is how they only half the time is he actually doing that brooding. The other time, he's like getting this weird thrill out of it all. Right?
Yeah.
Laughing maniacally, talking about how the violence, you know, gives him energy. He never gets tired. It's like, what is this?
Yeah. It's a Batman who's aware that he's mentally damaged.
Ninja Turtles? I don't know what. You're not Batman, but I don't know what you are. You're like a million characters shoved together.
Yeah. It's like he knows he's mentally damaged and talks about it.
Yeah.
And that's what's so weird about this.
Yeah, I used to smile all the time. Back when I had parents.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the like, Abigail here is quoting the Batman Lego movie.
Mm-hmm.
And
right, I was thinking about that.
And that movie does such a great job of pastiching what we're discussing as far as one of the flaws in recent interpretations of Batman.
I love that movie, probably for all the best and wrong reasons at the same time, because it has all of the like, it's making fun of everything I've made fun of modern Batman for like decades.
I do. I love that movie too, but actually I just realized I don't think Abigail's is a reference to Lego. I think that is from those what are they called? Bat metal videos. There's some videos on YouTube where they've created this super heavy metal stuff, and it's all animated, and Batman's the one singing.
No, that is the song from the Lego movie.
Yeah,
not Batman Lego movie, but the Lego movie.
Yeah,
Darkness, no parents. Being rich kind of makes it better.
Swarm. Huh. All right, never mind.
Yeah, well, they're in the same kind of thing for sure. No, I'm referencing the Lego movie.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Not bad.
I will say, I want to, before we go off the top, back to the topic of this comic, I do want to say one thing about the Lego Batman movie. The greatest failure in that movie is at no point does he look to the camera and say, "I've made a huge mistake."
Yeah.
That would have been the best thing.
I wanted some type of Will Arnett like classic.
I
line.
don't understand that reference.
It's from
Arrested Development.
His character. Well, it's a routine in the show. There's the show's like all recurring gags, and one of them is somebody saying, "I've made a huge mistake," and typically it's Will Arnett's character Job who says, "I've made a huge mistake," and there are lots of times in the Batman movie where part of the plot is him realizing he's made a huge mistake, and so it would be great.
Yes, I get you.
It would have been great.
Yeah,
but they didn't say that.
Magic.
In fact, my screensaver, my wallpaper on my computer, I believe, is a meme I made of that.
To be fair, with the amount of references packed into that movie. They might just have had, like, have created a black hole if they had added even one more.
I don't think so, but that's okay. Anyway, so yeah, the manic, and that was one of the things I was actually talking about earlier. And one thing I liked about the first several issues, the one thing is that it actually had some zest, some joie de vivre in Bruce, but it either became this gritty anger at everyone else, or hiding that he enjoyed things, or being angry that other people were enjoying things the way he enjoyed things, or it's this like crazy mania that we see on this page. And it's like, we can't have somebody, I don't know, like, I guess, and maybe it's me, maybe I'm weird, maybe my mind's been twisted by too many comic books. I don't have a problem imagining a man in a superhero universe who is dressed as a giant bat who still has a normal life.
I'll one up. I don't have a hard time imagining a person in real life trying to do that. Obviously not to the degree where his body's indestructible despite being a man, but still also mostly having a normal life. Now, he's probably going to run himself ragged because of how little sleep he's getting, but for a few years, you could probably pull it off.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the thing about the idea of even if, like, we were talking about costumes last week, right? It was last week? I remember. The idea of the superhero costume and the reflection of the superhero costumes in armor, right? Why does that get played with?
That's right.
It's because the idea that the Batman as the knight, right? That's a part of the mix that makes Batman Batman. The idea of the Lord of the Manor, who's protecting the village because it's part of his job as the Lord of the Manor, right? It's this European idea, and in a superhero universe, you do that dressed as a bat. So, which one of the many things that I think that I think that Sean Gordon Murphy missed about his follow up to White Knight was he missed that message entirely.
Yeah.
Beautiful
Batman's
art.
head, he should be spelling it that way, where he is I am the knight, but he's got like the K in
K-N-I-G. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be appropriate. Well, and even you have the Batman of Many Nations, right? The British Batman is the knight. Batman and Robin are the knight and the squire, right? Yeah. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, I mean, anyhow. Even if we still play with it here, though, right? We just use the less official term. If somebody isn't actually appointed to the level of a squire or a page or anything before that, you're just a ward until you get like an official rank. And he was always called his young ward.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing that's so frustrating too, is like there was a perfect example to explain that word to a new audience. And all Frank Miller can do is make fun of it. For those people who haven't read it, that was one of the things is I got to explain. Bruce refers to Dick as his ward.
I just asked it, actually. Well, let me bring it up.
And Dick says, "What's a ward?" And Bruce says, "Shut up."
Yeah.
And again, he's doing that to him the whole time, right?
Yeah.
It's
weird for him to say, "You're my ward," and that has no public thing outside of. I mean, Batman and Robin is what made us have that notion of the young ward of. Usually we hear it as ward of the state, you know, and but saying my young ward here is. I don't know of anything outside of Batman and Robin that really put that in the public.
It's because we don't use that in the vernacular. It's an old word.
It fell out of fashion.
It fell out of fashion.
Okay.
I'm responsible for you, but you're here to assist me. It's a two-way relationship here.
Right. And it's also the idea that I'm responsible to you, but you're not my child. Right. Yeah. So like your inherit, like I'm here to the idea of the word is also the idea that like I'm going to protect your continued physical existence, but you're not my inheritor. Mm-hmm. My children will inherit, but I will take care of you. And it's like fosterage in that way. Mm-hmm. But like even our modern idea of fosterage is not what fosterage meant 100 years ago.
Right.
Right. And so when people in the modern world are talking about foster kids, they're talking about, wards through the relationship with the state, where the state hires foster parents to take care of wards, whether they're wards of the state or wards or people that the state has control over while the parents are getting their act together, right? So
Yeah.
And you know what? Historically, too, a ward is almost like the idea of like a lady in waiting or whatever, where you are in that person's care. You might advance to inheritor, though. Like that option might always be there, especially if they don't have any biological kids of their own, or if it's like a lord who ended up getting his lands from being a knight previously, might pass that on to the squire that gets knighted later on. Like there's always like this process of leaving it open. And that's even the same with Robin. Robin kind of, actually becomes his son over time.
Yeah.
Well,
and since I'd rather talk about anything good aside from, the Frank Miller Batman and Robin, I want to say that back in the 80s, Marv Wolfman and the writers of Batman actually kind of addressed that with Jason Todd back before they changed Jason Todd. The early Jason Todd, they actually did have a long storyline where I think it was Nocturna was wanting to adopt him, and then Bruce Wayne was looking to adopt him, and Dick Grayson actually goes back to him and says, "How come you never tried to adopt me?" I was like, it was like a good conversation. It was a good little storyline that they got out of that. And that's, if they were doing a modern Batman and Robin set in modern times, Batman would be probably trying to adopt him. Back then, by the way, single bachelors could not adopt a kid. That was
just I mean, if you're a millionaire, the system will allow money to be thrown at things.
I suppose Daddy Warbucks did adopt a kid.
it would be a scandal issue. That's like
nowadays it would be.
Well, I mean, even then it would be a scandal. I mean, like I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole, but you look at like when James Barry became the adoptive parent of the I can't remember the name of the family. It was a huge scandal in London society because he was a divorcee, or because he was divorced. Divorcee is not the right term. Anyway, but because his wife took off with somebody else, and they had a whole thing. The fact that he was at that point single and was the foster father or whatever, a legal guardian for all these kids, it was a huge scandal.
Yeah. That could be a good story though, right?
Yeah.
You could have it. Like he's already been fostering him for years. It's like, I want to adopt him. I've got the money, starts pushing it through the system. But then you could even have legal pushback. You'd have a drama. Maybe a villain got involved and it was the one that actually started the legal pushback, not even knowing that it was Batman. It could be completely separate. It's just like there's a bunch of jerks in Gotham. They see a millionaire going through a scandal. Let me see if I can get some money out of this somehow myself. They don't even know that they're attacking Batman.
But here's the thing. We're forgetting that Gotham is always being portrayed as the world's most corrupt city, right? All Bruce has to do is slip the right person some money and boom, paper signed.
Yeah, unless there is something for somebody to gain by pushing back to it, which is a part of corrupted power, right?
Or
so you could find a fun story.
Yeah. I've always thought that they have not properly exploited all the things about being a rich man. They kind of leave that the Bruce Wayne stuff aside, despite all the things that go with being rich in a corrupted city. That there would be, for instance, the fact that he never had even one bodyguard until that Sasha lady was appointed to him, because the Wayne organization is like, you really should have a bodyguard. I mean, one bodyguard. You are a billionaire. You are a multi-billionaire. You are one of the richest men in the world. You don't have a bodyguard. It's like he should have 20 bodyguards. And there's all kinds of things like that they never really properly explore. So I'd much rather talk about this than about Frank Miller's book.
Well, I like
so that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Well, we've also, the other side of it is we've sort of expended some of the topics that that were poorly addressed, and now we're looking at other creative aspects
There's really
that could
nothing
have been addressed.
Yeah, it sucks. Let's That's it.
Well, right, and it's like you said earlier in the chat, though. At this point, we've probably gone over everything that's wrong with the comic. It just keeps churning out the same 5 or 6 problems over and over.
Yeah. They all suffer from the same problems. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
And once again, it's so sad because like I recently I reread Dark Knight a couple years ago. We reread Year One. I still really like those stories. Still think they're really well done. This was not.
yeah.
This was not. It's there's you guys ever seen the show Dead Like Me?
I have not.
Yes,
but I
I
know
love
of it.
Dead Like Me.
It's great, but I'm not talking about Dead Like Me per se, but there's a particular line where Mandy Patinkin's
Yeah.
character is complaining about
The whole
breakfast.
reason I watched
He
the
gets a
show.
hold of the cook, and he says, these eggs are not good. They're usually good, but these eggs are not good. Do we blame the cook or we blame the hen?
Ah.
Let's blame the
Yeah.
hen. I wish I could blame the hen. I wish I could blame the hen, but I can't. I'm blaming the cook.
I've talked before about, when I was trying to get into DC Comics way back when and trying to get, the ability to pitch stuff. And I have a bunch of friends, contemporaries, who were all trying to get in at the same time. And one of them actually got asked to submit a Batman story. And it was like, are you kidding? No, you never get to submit a Batman story. Batman's the one thing you're never going to get, if you're trying to get in. But, they are looking for so much Batman stuff like side projects and, spin-offs and things like that, that there's plenty of time that if they found something interesting, they'd give it to you without you being the official Batman writer, and so I was interested. I was like, okay, so what would I do if they said, okay, pitch a Batman story? And so I came up with that one about the ventriloquist I've told you about before. But as I was talking with them about, like, it's like what, every year Batman has some big, at least at the time, you remember the house Bruce Wayne murderer, there's Cataclysm, it's every year there's some big ongoing storyline now. And I always thought a good storyline for Batman would be not Batman, but Bruce Wayne, that legitimately his company starts falling apart. I mean, really starts having just regular, the economy's bad and there's some downturn in some big company that he owns, and one thing after another is bad. Like, this Lex Luthor goes after him for something and he loses one of his companies, and he and Fox, are trying to work it out, and all of a sudden Fox goes and confronts Bruce because he has started trying to sell off some of their companies, and he finds out that this is a false front for a completely not productive company that doesn't actually make anything. It just buys parts for the Batmobile. He doesn't know it's for the Batmobile, but it's all these false organizations, all these, company of a company of a company that you can't actually sell because it doesn't do anything. It's just Bruce Wayne hiding money or doing something with money. And he goes, and this is how he finds out that Bruce Wayne is Batman, which he's never known, at that time. And I thought that would be an awesome story to do.
Yeah.
Because if you actually try selling the Wayne organization and find out that half of it is just, this is how I order my Batarangs. It's like, oh, geez, I thought this was, some textile company that we could move, and it's not.
So can the guy who does this in this story be Elon Musk? Because you basically just explained Doge.
Just
Yeah.
put AI on it and chase us down, and it's like that turns out this isn't anything.
Elon
There's a
Musk,
lot of sheet metal that's just being scrapped up to loss, right? Like, did it fall off a truck or something? It's a regular thing that's happening.
Yeah, all the Batmobiles he goes through, and each one is what, $500 million?
something.
What is this bill for a giant robot dinosaur?
Yeah.
Well,
and supposedly he pays for the satellites for the Justice League.
Right.
It's like, are you kidding?
in fairness,
Yeah.
in fairness to the giant robot dinosaur, he didn't make that.
That's right.
That was that he stole it from somebody else.
It's from a case. Yeah. Yeah, I thought that would be an awesome story to do, and I don't know. It's nothing now because now I think Lucius Fox actually knows that he's Batman, and his son
Yeah.
is Batwing or something like that.
Both of his sons have been Batman at
Oh,
different
jeez.
times.
Also,
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with Wayne Enterprises sponsoring stuff from the Justice League because it is a very public entity that people know about, and
Right.
you could say that there's a lot of tax write-offs for the money that ends up going to supporting this general good for people.
Well, yeah.
Well,
And
and it's all scientific research of building
Yeah.
a satellite and all the things you learn about making a satellite.
Like
and see
he
why-
could definitely
yeah,
argue that this is in Wayne
Absolutely.
Enterprises' best
Yeah.
interest.
right.
Yeah.
And if you go back to the mid, even the late 90s, of late 80s to the mid 90s, I should say, during the Geffen era, right, the Justice League, especially the Justice League International, was paid for by the
government.
the
Yeah.
government by the
Yeah.
UN, and so
Mhm.
Wally
Which
West
means
had
it's paid for by the U.S.
well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But so Wally West had
Oh,
a big
man.
fat UN paycheck being on Justice League International, and his
Yeah.
little teleporter that
And-
got him to France and the whole business. And the thing is, the thing about that is that it would be contracts, right? So, the idea that Wayne Industries is if they were helping to fund that, well, they're also that's a giant slush fund anyway.
Well, I was saying like now, because that's technically international development. Justice League is going to be in trouble now that USAID's gone.
There you go. Well, and the other thing about it was the way that they wrapped that story up was that the UN, there's some stuff happened. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they basically lost the funding source that allowed them to pay for the Justice League International, and that's how they closed out that run when Grant Morrison took over the JLA title, and relaunched it. There was a whole storyline where Maxwell Lord and they all just lost their jobs because the governments of the world couldn't pay them anymore.
That was breakdowns. Yeah, that was the end of the Giffen run. Yeah, and then
Was that just a way of cutting out a bunch of characters who were no longer popular?
It was the end series so that these writers had been on contract and whatever else they could wrap up what they were doing before they gave the reins over to other people.
yeah, there was a whole era between Giffen and the Morrison era where Justice League just went awful. It was Jurgens, and then it was Gerard Jones, and and less said about Gerard Jones the better. But it was by the time that team fell apart, it was like Metamorpho and Blue Devil was in it, and Ice Maiden, but not Ice because she's dead, and a whole bunch of weird characters. Nuklon was member of the Justice League. I mean, that's how bad Justice League was. So
There was Jones is a whole different story.
Well, yeah. But I'm just saying that even that run of, I mean, it was so bad that they didn't have to explain why it doesn't exist. And they still managed to give them a good ending by, that whole scene from the first Morrison Justice League where the satellite is destroyed and Metamorpho has to rescue them all and he dies in the process. And it was like, that's a good way to end it. It's like, it actually was interesting the way it happened. So anyway, I have to go. It is 10 o'clock. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I just realized the time.
No, it is the time for the show to be over. So that's perfectly appropriate.
I have nothing else to say about Frank Miller. So.
Well, before we go, I don't have next week's show lined up yet. That was something I was supposed to do last weekend and didn't. I was part of it was I was wanting to hear back from Holler at Twitless about stuff. So I'll have to try to see if he can come on next week or the week after to talk about his grand adventure, and that'll be all the kind of story there. But until next time, get out there, guys. Get out and listen. Go read some comics. I really, really, really mean it this time.
Just not this one.
Just not this one.
Yeah.
You guys have a good night. Where's the button? Where's the button?
Bye, Abigail.
Later.